Let me take you back to a warm summer day in 1997. I was 20 years old, and I was in good physical condition, having recently passed one of the most physically demanding courses in British Armed Forces. Now, I was standing inside of a Lockheed C-130 Hercules with a parachute on my back, waiting to do what would be my 4th parachute jump on the way to achieving the coveted military parachutist wings. It was really hot and stuffy inside the Hercules, and that was further intensified within by the nerves of waiting to jump, and of course all the gear we had on. There was the smell of aircraft exhaust fumes hanging in the air. And the noise was if you were driving down the motorway at high speed with the windows open, as the wind rushed past the open door at 150 miles per hour. The first person was standing in the door, left hand on the door frame, right hand over his reserve chute. Me, being second to jump, I was facing the rear of the aircraft at 90 degrees to the door. The red light slowly faded on, followed by shouts of, "Red on!" And we were all ready. A few seconds later, the red light faded out and was replaced by the illumination of the green. Go! The first person took 2 steps and disappeared. Of course, me, in my adrenaline-fueled singular existence, didn't really notice him disappear. And I was supposed to take a step to the back and then to the right and out. But as I was told later, I just walked straight to the door and tripped. The first I knew of this was when I tumbled headfirst into the slipstream, rather than jumping, and immediately I felt the throbbing of one of my ankles. I'd twisted my ankle. So I got into clear airspace and went through the normal procedure, which was supposed to be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 check canopy. As I usually done, I just waited on the gentle tug and then had a look up to make sure it was fully inflated. It was. So slowly, I floated down to earth from a jump height of 1,000 feet. And as I did, I began to become aware of the pain in my ankle again. And I was concerned about landing. Now, we'd been trained on carrying out a parachutist role as we landed. But, as I discovered, my modus operandi was to land like a bag of washing. Only this time, I was going to be landing like a bag of washing on one leg. Now, fortunately, I managed to land without sustaining any further injury. And after a weekend of rest, ice, elevation, I was able to come back on the Monday and blag it to the medical officer that I was fit to jump again that evening by hopping up and down on the bad ankle with gritted teeth, of course. So I did my jump that night, and then within the next couple of weeks, I went on and I passed the course and I got my parachutist wings. I'd done it. I was a paratrooper. An airborne soldier. I could now strut around in full peacock mode with a maroon berry on my head and a set of wings on my arm. I'd made it, hadn't I? I could feel complete. Well, as I discovered, some months later, I hadn't made it. After a few weeks of mind-numbing guard duty, crunching depression struck, and I had a real identity crisis. I didn't know who I was. I went through some very dark times and asked myself some really difficult questions. I just really couldn't get that something that I'd previously viewed as such a big feat, I'd achieved it, but yet still didn't feel complete. Of course, in my naivety and my lack of understanding, I put my depression down to lack of busyness, lack of mental stimulation. Then this set about patterns that carried on in coping mechanisms for many years, way beyond leaving the army in 2000, of always keeping busy, striving to excel in a particular environment, and looking to achieve the next thing, i.e., perfectionism. Of course, the thing with perfectionism is we put expectations on both ourselves and others around us, which are unfair and unrealistic. And this started to be projected onto the people around me, of course, to my partner, to my children who then came along, my 4 sons. And I've missed out on much of their upbringing through my keeping busy and achieving, through to where they are now. My oldest son is now 18. But of course, I justified that to myself by saying I was doing the best thing. I was providing, even if that meant working 70 to 90 hours per week on what I like to call impressive erections. Cranes, of course. I don't know what you're thinking. So that I was often tired and not able to show up in the way that they needed me to, both as a husband and as a father. And this started to play out. And in time, it was becoming clear that I wasn't forming meaningful relationships. And I wasn't getting what I wanted, which was connection. And there were some significant life events which really pointed that out to me too. One being, in 2014, I'd put a lot of time, energy, focus, effort, money into a move to Vancouver, British Columbia with my family. My reasons were genuine. I wanted to spend more time with my children, give them more access to nature, and have a better lifestyle with them, basically. But because we weren't together in that decision, at the 11th hour, it didn't happen. I was devastated. Now, following that, I started to really reevaluate where I was. If life is about working all these hours, not showing up for your children, not enjoying your time with your family, and still being flipping skint, it wasn't for me. Something had to change. And I looked at the thing that I could change. That was me. The only thing that I have control over. That was my kickstart to personal development. And a book that got recommended to me that was really powerful was one by this man, Stephen Covey. A book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It was a game changer, a life changer for me. I went through a process of deep self-examination and big questions. But one concept that I really took away out of many, but one that's relevant to this, is that Covey said in his book, until a person can deeply and honestly say, I am who I am today because of the choices I made yesterday, that person cannot say, I choose otherwise. And I wanted to choose otherwise. So I had to face that who I was today was because of the choices I'd made yesterday. The bad financial decisions, the not showing up, the not reading my kids a bedtime story when I could well have done. The being at work for more hours, thinking that was going to achieve what we needed. And so then I carried on with my personal development process. On to, of course, as you'll be familiar, the Tony Robbins event, Unleash the Power Within in 2017. An amazing experience. But let me tell you this one thing. A mistake that I think people often make in the personal development world. When they go to these seminars and read these books, they try to become the person they are listening to or reading from. And the truth of the matter, when you try to become somebody else, you're being less of you. So I found in personal development, going to the Tony Robbins seminar, that I had to take things away that worked for me. and quietly I've tried to work away at those. One realization I had, which was a real barrier to my meaningful relationship situation, was I realized, it's not coming up, but I was so willing to deal with crap that I struggled to see the good in both myself and other people. How could I possibly have a meaningful relationship if I can't see the good in other people? So again, I looked at how I can overcome that. Now back to my army days, and one thing that I really remember from that and take away, just a simple thing, there was lots of things and probably stories that I can't really share here, not today anyway. But one thing was I remember watching a documentary about a chap called Eric Jones, who's a prolific climber and skydiver. Now, when I watched this documentary, which was called The Man Who Jumped to Earth, Eric Jones was around 63, 64 at the time, and he's still on the go now. The whole documentary was just wonderfully shot with fantastic scenery, of course, as they jumped, and an amazing soundtrack going alongside, which really captured me. But something I took away was at the end, towards the end, when they jumped off of Angel Falls, a guy got asked, "Why do you do this?" And he said, "When you leave that rock or that plane, nothing else matters." And it struck a chord with me at the time. I didn't understand why then, but I do now. It's what I call imposed presence. When you're in a situation where you have to become so focused on what you're doing, nothing else matters. It gives you that opportunity to have some space away from all the nonsense that's going on and the stuff that you're making up. So how do I do that now? I get on the mountains. Of course, voluntary presence is much better when you can bring that on yourself, but sometimes we need something to bring that for us. And when you're scaling up a rock, you're present. You're focused on that, not your bills, not your relationships, or anything like that. And I find that spending time challenging yourself in nature with good people, if you tick all those boxes, I mean, some of them are good, but all of them, it's amazing. It's one of the best remedies you can have in life. So I've been talking about presence. What is presence? Well, my view of what presence is it's essentially being fully aware of, focused on, and or completely engaged in whatever is happening right now, as well as accepting what is. We heard earlier about resistance and what resistance causes. It causes all of these emotions that are negative, anxiety, frustration. Whereas if we accept what is, we're in that present space where we can now deal with it. So one thing that I find really helpful, and this is an NLP thing too, and Andy was up speaking about NLP earlier. In language, when you listen to people, you often hear them talking about what's right or what's wrong. There is no right or wrong. They're an opinion. So many people spend time and energy through anxiety of thinking, what's the right thing to do? Oh, that was the wrong thing to say. But actually, if you remove that and you ask yourself, what is the best thing that I can do right now or in this situation? Because when you ask yourself that question, you tap into your core, which is good. In there is love. And if you combine that with your knowledge and experience, you come up with a higher quality answer than ever trying to anticipate what somebody else's right or wrong is. So why is presence important to us? Well, I believe that presence, acceptance, and understanding are the keys to the success of any relationship. Whether that be romantic, with your children, with your parents, with your friends, with your colleagues, with clients, whoever it may be. Now, personal development and becoming much more present as a man, unfortunately didn't stop the end of my 20-year relationship in 2017. But I'll tell you what it has done. It's helped me nurture the most important relationship, the one with myself, as I am. And I urge you to do the same. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, can I also ask to come on stage, Kevin Bennison? We only have one. We only have one.
Thank you so much, everyone. Let me just tell you very briefly. At school, I was a class clown, and I was absolutely vilified for it. And that's what kind of went on the road to me trying to be something else. And when I went to UPW this year, and I was on fire team with good people like Tony, I learned that it's okay to be the class clown. That some people will actually embrace you for who you are. And today was about stepping up here and just sharing with you who I am. And I really appreciate the recognition for doing that. So thank you so much to all the judges, the hosts, YESx Group, and indeed, most importantly, everybody for coming out. Thank you very much.